Tomaso Giovanni Albinoni was an Italian Baroque composer. While famous in his day as an opera composer, he is mainly remembered today for his instrumental music, such as the concerti. Biography. Born in Venice, Republic of Venice, to Antonio Albinoni, a wealthy paper merchant in Venice, he studied violin and singing. Relatively little is known about his life, especially considering his contemporary stature as a composer, and the comparatively well-documented period in which he lived. In 1694 he dedicated his Opus 1 to the fellow Venetian Cardinal Pietro Ottoboni. Ottoboni was an important patron in Rome of other composers, such as Arcangelo Gorelli. His first opera, Zenobia, Regina de Palmyreni, was produced in Venice in 1694. Albinoni was possibly employed in 1700 as a violinist to Charles IV, Duke of Mantua, to whom he dedicated his Opus 2 collection of instrumental pieces. In 1701 he wrote his hugely popular suites Opus 3, and dedicated that collection to Cosimo III de' Medici, Grand Duke of Tuscany. In 1705 he was married. Antonino Biffi, the Maestro di Cappella of San Marco, was a witness, and evidently was a friend of Albinoni. Albinoni seems to have no other connection with the primary musical establishment in Venice, however, and achieved his early fame as an opera composer at many cities in Italy, including Venice, Genoa, Bologna, Mantua, Udine, Piacenza, and Naples. During this time he was also composing instrumental music in abundance. Prior to 1705, he mostly wrote trio sonatas and violin concertos, but between then and 1719 he wrote solo sonatas and concertos for oboe. Unlike most composers of his time, he appears never to have sought a post at either a church or noble court. But then he was a man of independent means and had the option to compose music independently. In 1722, Maximilian II Emanuel, Elector of Bavaria, to whom Albinoni had dedicated a set of 12 concertos, invited him to direct 2 of his operas in Munich. Around 1740, a collection of Albinoni's violin sonatas was published in France as a posthumous work, and scholars long presumed that meant that Albinoni had died by that time. However, it appears he lived on in Venice in obscurity. A record from the parish of San Barnaba indicates Tomaso Albinoni died in Venice in 1751, of diabetes mellitus. Music and influence. Most of his operatic works have been lost, largely because they were not published during his lifetime. However, 9 collections of instrumental works were published. These were met with considerable success and consequent reprints. He is therefore known more as a composer of instrumental music today. In his lifetime these works were compared favorably with those of Corelli and Vivaldi. His 9 collections published in Italy, Amsterdam and London were either dedicated to or sponsored by an impressive list of Southern European nobility. Albinoni wrote at least 50 operas, of which 28 were produced in Venice between 1723 and 1740. Albinoni himself claimed 81 operas. In spite of his enormous operatic output, today he is most noted for his instrumental music, especially his oboe concerti. He is the first Italian known to employ the oboe as a solo instrument in concerti and publish such works, although earlier concerti featuring solo oboe were probably written by German composers such as Telemann or Handel. In Italy, Alessandro Marcello published his well-known oboe concerto in D minor a little later, in 1717. Albinoni also employed the instrument often in his chamber works. His instrumental music attracted great attention from Johann Sebastian Bach, who wrote at least 2 fugues on Albinoni's themes and frequently used his basses for harmony exercises for his pupils. Part of Albinoni's work was lost in World War II with the destruction of the Dresden State Library. As a result, little is known of his life and music after the mid-1720s. The famous Adagio in G minor for violin, strings and organ, the subject of many modern recordings, is by some thought to be a musical hoax composed by Remo Giazzato. However, a discovery by musicologist Misca Mangano, Giazzato's last assistant before his death, brought up new findings. Among Giazzato's papers, she discovered a modern but independent manuscript transcription of the figured bass portion and 6 fragmentary bars of the first violin, bearing in the top right-hand corner a stamp stating unequivocally the Dresden provenance of the original from which it was taken. This provides support for Giazzato's account that he did base his composition on a source